So welcome everyone to this session on lessons learned from teaching children. My name is Rory Neary and I'm joined by Peter Veenstra and Leo Veenstra, and we'll be taking you through some elements of the journey that we have gone through over the last 12 months, having set up a group called PowerApps4Kids. That really informs a lot of our learning that we've had in that time. So obviously at the start of what was lockdown, we didn't know what was going to happen, and we had a little nucleus of an idea that that PowerApps actually could work for children. And so I'm just going to jump through the presentation, and so yeah, it's a welcome to everyone. Welcome to adults and welcome to any children that get to see this. As you can see, the young boy on the screen is almost certainly looking at a Power App. He may even be looking at an app about the solar system. But I don't know if PowerApps does that sort of thing. So maybe later on in the presentation, we will get to see something like that. The sponsors for the event are on screen. So we've got Script Runner, we've got Global, DQ Global, Proximo 3, Red Spire, Agilysys, and Hitachi Solutions. If you have any questions at any point, please put them into the chat and we will be looking at the chat as we go. So as we go through each of the slides, we'll be verifying that there's, if there's any questions you got, and frankly, the more questions, the better. Even if you think that they're silly questions, they're all important to us. So I'm now going to hand over to Peter Veenstra to introduce himself to you.
Hi everybody. I hope you're enjoying the Scottish Summit so far. Thank you very much, Rory, for getting this session kicked off. I'm Peter Veenstra. I work at Hybrid Services as a solution architect, and you can see my Twitter handle over there. On a day-to-day basis, I do lots of Power App stuff and Power Automate, SharePoint. It's all complicated stuff, but that's not what we're working on today. Today, it's all about Power Apps for Kids and lessons that we've learned about teaching children. Haven't we, Leo? Have you learned a lot in the last year? Yes. Definitely. So yeah, we very much enjoyed the Power Apps for Kids journey. In the beginning, it was something very, very new, and it's now, well, we're the experts, aren't we, Leo? Together with Rory and all the others.
As for myself, my name's Rory Neary. I will reveal later on where I'm currently working. I am also a solution architect. You can see my Twitter handle there. By all means, follow me on Twitter. So my background is that I used to be an accountant. It's important to note that people coming into this platform don't have to be developers to come into the platform. Leo, what do you used to be? Like, were you like something special before being a young boy? Like maybe you had were you a data analyst before you built any apps?
Did you have a previous job, Leo?
What was your previous job?
Schoolboy, isn't it? Yeah, schoolboy, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the point, really, is that you don't have to be a developer to be successful in this platform. And really, PowerApps4Kids is about kids, but it's also about people who don't believe that they belong in this particular space.
Well, one important thing now, Rory, we just had a question coming in on the chat. Somebody asking about our age, and I think it's actually something that's quite important. Where a year ago when we started, how old were you then, Leo?
I was 8 a year ago.
8 years, exactly. Eight years and creating the first Power App. I think that's quite an important part of the whole story, that it doesn't really matter how old you are. You can start at any time. You might start with really complicated apps when you get older, But it's actually very important to start with easy apps, even if you're older, if you're an adult. Starting with simple apps is quite a good thing. Adults quite often in jobs, for example, they will try and make a complicated app that is needed for their company. But actually, if they start with simple apps, it would be a lot easier to get started with the whole platform.
And that's absolutely correct. That simplicity. Actually, I meant to put into this presentation, and it's not in there. I meant to put in a quote from Einstein, and Einstein said that if you can't teach it to an 8-year-old, then you don't understand it yourself. And I think that's kind of true. I mean, it's certainly been borne out in our own presentations, and you'll see later on we haven't been successful the whole way through. So that's something to be aware of. I find the whole education piece fascinating. So that was a little bit about myself. I'm just going to move you guys off the screen and give you an idea about this PowerApps4Kids timeline. Now, I apologize if it seems like we're advertising this, but in reality, our experience of teaching children is completely informed by the fact that we thought, hey, kids might like to build apps. How are we going to do this? And so a lot of this experience that we've had is informed by this little adventure that we've gone on. So the very first thing that we had was we had a first session in March. And that's where I reached out to the community and to the Microsoft Reactor, and I said, hey, I'd like to do a session for children. What do you think? And we had a few people come on to the session, and we showed a few apps that were quite interesting, and we never quite knew where it was going to go beyond that. And then in June we set up some things, but I think that before that, I wonder, Peter, if you might say a few words about because you got involved just after the very first session that we had, and just maybe speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, at some point, I saw a tweet from Rory that said something like I'm doing some power apps and with children and whatever else. I thought, I've got children, therefore I could get started on this. And what we did in the beginning was just a very simple app, and to test. We tested your additions, didn't we? Your addition sums. And do you remember what that app looked like, Leo?
Yeah.
So can you describe it?
Well, it had on the left side of your screen, it would have your first number. Then it would have a times. Then it would have the next number. Then it would have an equals, and then it would have a text input for your answer. Then you would answer that. There would be a smiley face and a sad face, smiley face for correct, sad face for wrong, and then there would be a next question button, and it would just generate it.
So that was a very quick app that I think we developed it within, half an hour, wasn't it? Within half an hour, Leo knew how to create his first Power App. And the idea was very simple. And within no time, we created it. Then we created a little video of it, and we shared it with Rory and went, hey, what do you think of this? And then I think a couple of weeks later, we did a noughts and crosses app and built that even live on a PowerApps4Kids session. Really good, because that was somewhere where children show other people, either adults or children, how to create a little game. And I think you demoed that within half an hour, wasn't it?
Yeah,
from scratch. Yeah,
about that.
So that was a really good thing. I think that's why we got things started. And I think then quickly after that, I think PowerApps4Kids was really born. And we got our website, we got our Twitter, we got our YouTube, we got our whatever else, everything that is PowerApps4Kids, even the logo. So that was I think a big win.
That was your little creation, Peter. Well done on that. You got a gold star for that. Yeah, so we like, one of the things I wanted to do was, as much as anything else, I wanted it to be kind of one thing. So I wanted it to be, if you ever looked up Power Apps for Kids, I wanted you to find us. And in some ways, it's a bit like building a business or a brand or whatever it might be. But I just wanted us to and it's kind of worked out in that way. So I think that, as well as this being a session on, hey, this is how to build, apps and so on and teach children, it's also about how it is you might choose to build a community around something that you're interested in. So we obviously put the website up. We have PowerApps4Kids.com, and we've had some really interesting presenters. One thing to note, that we've actually got a series of lessons at www.powerplatformlearn.academy. So we will come on to that later on, but it occurred to me at one point that actually just giving people YouTube access probably wasn't enough, and that they needed something that they could almost sit their children in front of and then say, hey, go and learn this. And so that was the idea around that. And it's all built around this idea of educating people. Peter, shall I take this slide just to talk about the different people in the team? So
yeah, go for it.
There's a whole group of us. So there's myself and Peter. There's Elaine. She is down in Australia, and with Jiva, she set up an Australian or rather Asia Pacific Power Apps for Kids group. And we've also got Michelle Wong and Laura GB in Europe, who are very interested in this whole journey that we're all going on. And as well as that, we've got a whole host of contributors, people that have actually been in the sessions and put something together for us. And I think the one thing that I notice the most about all the people that are involved, nobody seems to really want recognition for what they're doing, which is just as well, because quite often I don't actually introduce them very well, and I don't actually say who they are or where they're from. But to a degree, if you're a child, then knowing that Shane Young is talking to you and that he's got 90,000 subscribers doesn't really matter. Or that Abram Dunham is from Microsoft, and she's a leading light in that organization. But one of the things that is really nice about it is that none of them have said, yeah, but I want you to do a link to this. It's been quite sort of uplifting. But as I say, they have been there along the way. I should have actually said that one of our contributors is in fact on the session today, and he built an app that was around this idea of orbiting planets. And I will be really honest with you and say that I'm not sure if I fully understand the app that this PowerApps4Kids kid has actually built. But the child that does understand it, Leo, does understand it, and I'm going to pass over to Leo now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand over to Leo to talk about an app that he built around the solar system.
Yeah, we're just getting the app up and running up here. It's fine. There we go.
So here I have my app. The planets are orbiting the sun, and you can see there's this button here so it shows this is currently playing. Press on it. Now it's in pause mode. I can play it again. The text here is the mode it's in. And I can click on one of the planets. It will show you the facts, and you can say back to solar system, and it'll go back to the exact same screen. But it's quite hard to catch the planet you want apart from the sun.
Because they're all moving around, aren't
Yeah,
they?
because they're all moving around. For example, if I want Jupiter, I click that. I can get it because it's so big, but Mercury, it does struggle. However, it is possible.
Especially when they go in front of each other. That makes it really difficult, doesn't it?
For example,
Oh, you missed it.
I missed it.
You might want to pause it, I think.
Yeah, so I can pause it. And look at that big club. I can get... Well, I can't get Uranus at the moment, but I can get the fact. Yeah. And, yeah, so it can pause, it can play, and if I pause it, you might notice the planets are moving around. This is just due to my picture.
And some of them move in one direction, in the other direction, don't they?
I have made that on purpose because that is what it does in the real solar system.
Oh, that looks good.
That is really clever.
Yeah, I think it's really good. And the thing is, I think just to show people a little bit what that really means, because you're sharing your screen at the moment. If you close the app and put it in edit mode, just show a little bit how you rotate around. So if you take one of those planets that moves around, just so that people get a bit of an understanding what, so your axis and y's, isn't it? There we can see. So you can see basically these things are just very small expressions, as they call them, lots of mathematical bits. And it's actually quite a nice way of starting to learn how to develop applications, isn't there? And to make things move and whatever. We don't want to go into details now how we exactly all did all of it, but Leo basically built all of this up and almost, well, pretty much all from scratch, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All from a blank page.
So
imagine going from a blank screen to a moving planets app. It's quite good, isn't it?
Yep.
So the fundamentals of what makes this special are that you have X and Y locations for objects. X is the amount to which you go across from left to right, and Y is actually the amount to which you go from top to bottom. And what Leo was able to do was to attach that to a timer in a special way using formulas. We're not going to go into it now, but that is the crux of this. And then when we look at the images, they're actually what's known as GIFs. I'm trying to remember what the different, something like graphic interlaced format. But essentially it's a lot of pictures inside one image. And that's why it looks like they're actually moving when of course they aren't. So Leo, thank you for doing that for us. I'm going to jump back into the presentation. So let me share my screen again. And I'm going to go on to screen 2. And I will share that. And then now I'm going to, oh, I am actually sharing my screen. That was quite nice. That was much slicker than I thought it was going to be. So we've done the little session on the orbiting planets, and that was I hope you find that interesting. And people within the community have found that sort of thing interesting, because really it's great for the adults to say how wonderful PowerApps is and how easy it is and how cool you can do things, but there is literally nothing better than having children as ambassadors for the platform itself. And you know, I guess, you know, this is a session about learning about how to create a community, but this particular community, you know, there is literally nothing like having children to demonstrate the possibilities that you can have with our platform. And for all that we all want to do amazing presentations, the kids do the best ones and they do the most compelling ones, and you can't get away from that. And maybe what we need, Peter, is one of those, I don't know if you saw on the news, there was this person that accidentally ended up on a Zoom call and turned themselves into a cat. The cat was talking. But maybe what we need is we need a version of that where you turn me into a child, which would be really nice because I'd have hair again, and I could be like a little child, and you'd put my voice up a little bit, and maybe we'd get a few more people in the show if we did it that way. Okay. Yeah, as I say, children and ambassadors. I always feel like I'm sort of using them in an incorrect way, but they have been brilliant for us. And so Peter, knows that, because we use Twitter and things like that, and certainly, Peter, when you used the Twitter and you posted about certainly about the solar system, that was seen thousands of times.
Yeah, I think we had, looking at the stats of that one tweet, we copied the school in as well. I'm sure the school didn't know what happened to them. That little video of 2 minutes long about the solar system, I think it was seen about 10,000 times by people across the world, which is quite a lot for just a small little power app that we developed on a Saturday morning, wasn't it? Yeah.
And it's a lot for a tweet, as we know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was probably the most popular family tweet we've ever had.
You're going to have to trip over a few things, and they're always quite popular.
Yeah, I could do that. I could try that. I'll do that next.
So, as well as the children, we've been able to sort of put things on Twitter. We've also, in the UK and in the Asia Pacific, PowerApps4Kids, had children as presenters, and I love it when they act as presenters. I absolutely love it, and I think it's a brilliant thing to be able to offer a platform for children to do something like that. We're in a digital world now anyway, so they're going to be doing this in the future and beyond. So that's children as ambassadors.
Rory, have you seen recently, there was a post on LinkedIn with 2 twins from Pakistan, if I'm not wrong, and they even got certified in PowerApps. There are plenty of adults who try to get these certifications, these Microsoft certifications done, and some people will struggle with it, but these 2 twins, I think they were both 9 or 10 years old. They both passed the exam first time around.
It was probably the same one each time.
Could be, but even then, to pass twice as twins is already quite good.
Yeah, exactly. So and they actually came onto the Asia Pacific session as well. So what a great thing for them to be able to do. And I know that Microsoft have taken a keen interest in them. So we will be taking our cut from their first pay packet when they join Microsoft. It's in the terms and conditions. So teaching children, we haven't talked really about the lessons learned from teaching children, because we haven't always got it right. And I'm sure Leo will say that some sessions are better than others. But the things that we've learned from teaching children, you could sometimes say that they could apply to teaching anyone, but specifically when we're talking about, in fact, Peter, do you want to take this one? I feel like Yeah,
I can do. I actually think that teaching children shouldn't be any different from teaching adults. For big children or little children, it's even part of our slogan. It doesn't really matter if you're teaching big children or little children. You need to keep it simple and small steps at a time. If you take big steps, you'll probably find that you're going to lose some people. Simply because they're not going to be interested because they couldn't understand the first step. But you find that in business world, quite often, we need to get an app ready, and it needs to be ready by Friday. And today it's Tuesday. And what do? We've only got a couple of days. Well, we better go and rush and straight away do the last step. That's a dangerous thing to do. And potentially, I think it's the wrong thing to do. With children, I think we're a little bit more aware, because if I teach Leo the last step first, he will probably walk away not being interested, and he'll do something else. And adults, they're quite often, well, okay, we'll just sit through it. But it doesn't make it into a good lesson. And I think the general approach of, you want to start with the beginning, well, in PowerApps, that is a blanco sheet, isn't it? A blanco page, blank screen. And once you've got that blank screen unblanked, if you want to call it like that, and you've created some bits on it, and it grows, and the app becomes bigger, then you take the next step. You make it slowly grow. And you need to look at how can we make this look good. But this is the nice thing within Power Apps anyway, is that it's quite often used by anybody within your organization. It's even developed by anybody within your organization. And that's very, very different. When we now teach children, we should basically take those same principles of basics first. Take the small steps. So like I explained earlier, the easy, or like Leo explained, I think, the sum app, the multiplications app, was a very easy app to develop, but it got all the nice little basics sorted out of what do you do with numbers, and how can you store them somewhere? How can you compare numbers? How can you multiply numbers? How can you now check if your answer is the same to what it should be? And that's a very important lesson, I think, to take away from from our experience, I think, with PowerApps4Kids. I think we've seen a couple of presentations where it was more focused at the app was aimed at children, and I think that's a different type of PowerApps4Kids. I think you've got two parts of PowerApps4Kids. One is the bit where we're talking about an app developed by children. So that's all the good stuff Leo just showed us. And then you've got the apps that are aimed at children. That could be a complicated game. And I've seen a couple of really nice examples. Some people have developed chess, for example, or some people developed Pac-Man, I think I've seen, and all sorts of other games, and all within Power Apps, where you would even not be sure if that was possible before you started, probably.
So we build from blank. We tend to go. I mean, some of the best ones have actually been done by Laura GB, and she just goes very slowly and deliberately, and it doesn't take her that long to then create something that is actually quite an effective app. We keep it simple, so rather than having an app with lots and lots of different concepts in the same app, we try and keep them so that we're not overloading it with loads of different functions, because it just gets too much. In fact, for a very long time we didn't use data. I don't know if you remember, we didn't use data at all. There was no connections to any data. These were just like little apps with buttons and so on, and it was fine. And then gradually we've introduced them to data, but just because we needed it. So we've been keeping things simple. And then one of the most important things is to minimize jargon. And so we try and do that ourselves. And this, as far as I am concerned, applies to any kind of learning. If your audience does not understand your jargon, do you know what jargon means, Leo?
No.
Jargon means those funny words that you don't understand. So, you know, at your school, they might say key stage 2, right? Now, if I don't know what key stage 2 is, then that's jargon. But if you said year 9 or year 6 or year 7, I might understand that better. But in Power Apps, there may be jargon, like people will use words that you don't understand. And have you seen some presentations where they've said something and you don't quite know what they're talking about?
There've been a couple. However, I must say there hasn't been too many.
Okay, but if I said to you that we need to make sure that our ALM is okay when we're building apps, what would I mean?
We don't know, do we?
It would be difficult, and that's me using jargon. But then if I said to you application lifecycle management, you'd know a little bit more. And then I might say to you, actually, all I really mean is how we get it from an app from one place where we're happy with it to another place where we'd like people to use it. That's a bit more understandable. And so minimizing jargon is an act of empathy between us as presenters and the audience. And whether or not, as far as I'm concerned, whether or not it's an adult there or whether or not it's a child, I think we should be minimizing jargon anyway.
And I even think something else we should potentially include, I guess, over here is this, do one thing at a time. So where the first presentation what we had, we used something where which is called the set function. I think that was probably the first little thing we worked with. The set function, all it does is basically it stores information in a variable. So but I'm already talking in jargon again. So that means that the important thing is you need to do things in the right order. So you need to take some of the basics first, then introduce a few more little basic bits, a few more, and then at some point you can make the full story. And that will help an awful lot by understanding the little bits first before you get to all of the little bits. Because if you suddenly introduce 5, 6 new little small things which you could possibly understand, people are going, ooh, that's far too much. I can't keep up with it. So keep it small is another important one.
Yeah. So how about I spend a couple of minutes building a really simple but cool app? How does that sound, Leo?
Good.
Do you remember?
Do you want to see some Power Apps?
Okay. So I am gonna just make sure come out of that. So I'm going to build us an app and just demonstrate just how little I know about using that. So there we are. I'm going to move on to myself here, and I'm going to go on to PowerApps. I'm actually going to build this. I'm going to build this from, literally from the Office screen. So we're going into Office here. I'm going to click on PowerApps. I am going to go quite quickly. So this isn't properly a lesson. I'm almost certain that if you actually go to our course, then you can actually watch this as a lesson. I'm going to click on apps now, and then I'm going to say, well, I'd like to do a new app, and I'm going to do it for a Canvas app, because that's what we're building apps here. There are lots of different types of apps, but we build Canvas apps. So just think of Monet and artists and so on. Then I'm going to kind of click on a tablet layout, because a phone layout is really small and we want a big app. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a text input. So I'm going to do insert, input, text input. That means I can now write something in here. So if I go onto the play mode here, I can type in hello world. Now, that's not very interesting, is it? Should we finish it there, Leo?
Is it a good app?
Yeah.
No, we want to see more.
You're very
well, it's good how you can do the text input, but I think we do need a bit more.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do now?
Doesn't wow us, does it?
No.
I'm going to bring in a gallery. Okay. So here's a gallery. What is a gallery? Well, it's just imagine, I don't know, a set of drawers maybe. We can have data. We could push that data in here. In a very kind of in a very consistent format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very special gallery. Now I am going to do a function here. So what I'm going to do is I am going to split something. Split. What am I going to split? I am going to split text input 1. Now I'm going to split the text of text input 1, which is my hello world. How am I going to split it? Now, quite often you split by a comma or something like that, but I'm going to split by nothing at all. And let's see what this does. So it's a bit strange, but we seem to have a few more rows, but we can't quite see anything. So what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to say, I'm going to make it blank. Then what I'm going to do is in there, I'm actually going to go onto the plus here. I'm going to bring a text label in here. And notice that it says the letter H. Now I'm just going to drag this up a little bit here. So you can see on the screen, we've got a little bit of hello world there. How odd. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it a bit. So we're going to do Robin Leo. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to do this sign language app using Robin and Leo. So I'm going to do a special thing here, and I'm going to do the wrap count of 5. So that now means on the screen we've got Robin and Leo, but that's not a sign language app yet, is it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to GitHub and I'm going to go onto the Power Apps for Kids because I've got some special things in there. And in here, I've got something to do with sign language. Now, I got my niece to make me some videos about how you do sign language. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of that. I'm going to go copy the link address. I'm going to go back onto my app. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and put this into a little media object, pop a little quote in. I am going quickly here, so I apologize for that. But you can see that actually works, doesn't it? So what would you think we should do here now, Robin?
Leo?
Sorry, Leo.
We should add those bits into the gallery and get the right letters.
Okay, right, let's do that then. So I'm just going to copy, and in fact, right-click, copy, right-click, paste. So this must work. Oh, in fact, I haven't clicked on it properly. I'm going to copy. I need to be in there and then paste. Oh dear, something's gone wrong because that definitely doesn't work. What's happened?
CCCCC.
Yeah, let me find.
What do we want it to say?
Robin, Leo.
Yeah.
Right. So what we're going to do here is instead of that being C, we need to change it. But we need to change. It means to be different every time. So what I'm going to do is end the quote, then do an and, then I'm going to do this item dot result, which is my letter, and then do another and then do another quote, and wait for it. We have got Robin Leo done as a sign language app, and I don't think that took very long.
That's, I would say, about 4.5 minutes to wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's very catchy. And that really, so there are some technical revelations that we've had along the way. So that this was about the things that we've learned from teaching PowerApps to children. So I'm actually going to specifically talk about some things here. Now, one of the things, believe it or not, is PowerPoint and how PowerPoint, there have been some really, really interesting revelations. So I am going to jump onto that, but I'm not going to do it straight away. We also saw that Brian Dang, who's very very popular in the Leo, have you heard of someone called Bill Gates?
No.
No? He does something in Microsoft, I think, doesn't he? Didn't he start Microsoft?
I don't know.
I think he did.
Peter, bad Peter.
Yeah, I should have taught you that. All those years ago.
It'll work at the Scottish Summit. So yeah, Brian Dang was so well known. He actually ended up presenting to Bill Gates about PowerApps and the work that he'd done with them and how he'd helped teach children about PowerApps. I've seen some bits about voice recording. It's probably in and around these ideas here. I won't go into that, but it's this idea that you can actually use the microphone within PowerApps to record your voice. I think it's really neat. And it's something that people rarely do. And it's also the use of GitHub. And we saw earlier on that I was able to connect to some data within GitHub that I then used in my app, which I think is cool. And it was a real revelation to me because that then meant I had somewhere that I could put information that then would be available to people from outside my organization. And then one little one, which was kind of funny, really, because one thing that I did when I was on one of my when I was building one of my apps was I went in here and just say, for example, I went onto this object here and I went onto there and I wanted to know, in fact, let's go onto this one here. And I wanted to know the fill property. Well, one of the people that presents would always kind of go down there and they would go to the fill property. But actually, I don't do that. I kind of go well, actually, if I'm there, I just kind of go onto this and then type in fill. And then I just get to the fill property that way. But I know it sounds silly, but the time saving that you get from something like that is absolutely immense because you do it so often. So that was a little technical revelation. It wasn't mine because I knew how to do it, but it was for one of my co-presenters. So now I really, really do on this occasion need to go to the presentation. Anyway, slideshow, that's it. And I'm going to go from the current slide. Okay, good. So we haven't been successful the whole way through. And we have not got everything right, but we have learned things along the way. Leo, do you think you've ever learned anything from getting it wrong before you got it right?
Yes. You mainly learn things when you get things wrong.
And that's because if you do it right, you don't learn anything.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so we have got things wrong along the way. And I think it's worth us just saying, hey, we didn't get it right every time. So jargon was one of them. It was actually probably the most important one. Some of it is low turnout. And maybe the learning in there is a bit about resilience, because although we didn't always have loads of people, we knew we were doing the right thing. I don't know about you, Peter. What do you think about, sometimes you don't always have loads of people there, but do you feel we're doing the right thing?
The thing is, it's easy to get through to the community that we've already got. It's quite difficult to get into the new people. But I think like today, we've got quite a lot of people in here that I think have never been to a PowerApps4Kids session before. And I think if we ask people, can you send us a message in the chat if you haven't been to PowerApps4Kids before, I think you'll find that we actually get quite a lot of people saying, yeah, that's me. But it's difficult to get through to different kinds of people in different kinds of way. We use a lot of Twitter, for example, but only people who are on Twitter you'll get through to.
Yeah, exactly.
People that are new to Power Apps, they might not have a Twitter account. So how do you get through to those kind of people? You need to get through to schools potentially and get schools to advertise PowerApps4Kids. It's a difficult thing. We tried on LinkedIn, for example, but the best way is if you've got a friend who goes to whatever club, you might want to go too. It's quite often mouth to mouth that works the best in these kind of things. The easy conversation of, hey, I'm going to this evening to PowerApps4Kids. Would you like to come and join me? That's how you get more people in.
And I think the thing is that I kind of, in my own mind, I just wanted for it to be the case that when someone went looking for something to do with PowerApps4Kids that they thought was, would be relevant, that they would find us. That there was, rather than kind of our experience of just not finding anything, was that we would actually find something, that there would be something there for them, and a little course or something to excite them, and so on. So there's a little bit about resilience there. We know that when we built complex apps, they're not as easy and as to excite people. So I think there's two types of apps, ones that you build from blank, and as Peter said earlier on, there's also apps that you just say, hey, this is a cool app, have a look at how it works. I'm not going to explain to you how it works, but it's a Power App, so just realize that this is how good it could be. A bit like if you showed, Roger Federer playing tennis and saying, hey, you could be built like him one day. But sometimes people did try and build complex apps, and I sort of say inaccessible apps. What I really mean is that the formulas were so complex that nobody was going to understand them, and they certainly weren't going to understand them in 25 minutes. And one of my little failures along the way was I used, I know it sounds mad to say the failure was using the Power Platform, but I used the Power Platform to manage all of the YouTube videos and so on. And it was really hard work, and really what I was trying to do was I created a Power BI report that would look at all this data, which meant that somebody could then click on it and get through to a video. But the reality is that's not really what people needed. They needed something a bit more linear than that. And so consequently, we've had some successes along the way. And I think that our branding of the fact that we branded it quite early on was quite useful. Peter, do you want to sort of take this slide?
Yeah, I can do. Basically, I think we've even had quite a good success in the branding, where people are starting to recognize the idea of Power Apps for Kids. It's even got to the level where we've been contacted by Microsoft if we can help them. And you think, okay, I think we've now got somewhere, because it means that it's gone beyond our little community of, I don't know how many people we've got involved, but let's say it's 50, between the 50 and 100 people probably worldwide. It's now the bigger world is starting to think about, hey, Power Apps for Kids is actually quite a nice idea. And I think that's a great success. And part of that is all the branding story, I think. But that is a lot more than just branding.
And I think the thing that we got right was that we consistently said Power Apps for Kids. So essentially, you go to Twitter, you look at Power Apps for Kids, it's the same thing. And if you go onto YouTube and you find Power Apps for Kids, it's us. And if you go onto the web, it's Power Apps for Kids, it's us. It's the same thing. Whereas sometimes you find that when people have, you know, different versions of their digital selves, they're actually got completely different names. You don't realize they're the same thing. So, you know, it's just an exercise in community building and recognition and so on. And so, you know, and I think our YouTube channel is successful. It's the right thing to use, because it means that it's free, you know, for the consumers to make use of. Whether or not they're part of Power Apps for Kids or not, they can always, it's something that they can be referred to at any point. And Twitter is, you know, it's the same thing. And we've managed to engage children. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. You know, the excitement that we thought that children could have has turned out to be, you know, something special. This might be a time for Leo to talk about that. Leo, did you make the app to do with the toy you take to bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did make that.
So what does it do?
So I can press on a button which chooses the toy, and it just shows an image of that toy.
How many toys have you got in your app?
I don't know.
Something like 10 cuddly toys?
Maybe a bit more.
Maybe a bit more. And then every night you get a different cuddly toy. And the nice thing over here is it actually works on a mobile phone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can get our mobile phones out, play the Power App, you press the button on the app, and you can go to sleep.
Leo, what happens when you and Dad end up picking the same toy? Do you get to take it to bed, or does he get to take it to bed?
Nah.
No, it's just you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just me using the app.
Yeah, he keeps them all to himself.
Oh no, poor Dad. You'll have to get him one of his own.
Yep.
And I think, as we've already recognised, the community in all its different forms has got behind this, and that means whether it's the humans of IT or whether it's an event which is running. When it was the Build conference, and we did a little video for them at Build that was running every so often, and it was a great encouragement to us all that we were asked to do that. So we are getting towards the end of the presentation. I don't know if you're. Oh, actually, I've got more things on here. It just shows how bad I am at PowerPoint. It's a career success. Well, we had in the same month we had 3 people become MVPs. That is? I'm pretty sure that's right. There was Matt Devaney, there was Michelle Wong, and I'm trying to remember who the third person was. I don't think it was Jiva. It was one of the other people that had been on the but we had we had people being successful, and then beyond that, I did say at the start that where I was working now would be to be revealed, and actually Peter reached out to me towards the end of last year and talked about whether or not we might be able to do something together as part of hybrid services, and we got chatting, and we felt that actually we could work together very well, and I'm really thrilled to be working with Peter at Hybrid Services now, and the future looks very bright.
A little bit orange, isn't it?
I'm glad you're not saying that you're regretting it already.
No, never.
So, and then we've got the website. So the website is reasonably successful. So I'm just going to do a little escape on that. So let me just jump out of there. So I'll just take you to the website. The reason for that is because it takes you to a lot of places that you might choose to go to. So you jump onto PowerApps4Kids.com. Then you can see that you've got the events and when those events are going to be, and you can click on there and you get through to it. I'm not quite sure where this is going to take us, but if you want to get to the course, you just click on here and it'll take you through to the page where you get to the course. But from an accessibility point of view, you don't have to be registered to the course. You can just literally just click on the button and you can actually just start the course straight away. And literally nothing for you to do there. And in this case, this is one that looks at YouTube, and this was this idea about, this was very, very successful in terms of having a great way of creating a lesson. So this thing here, you can either just consume it on as you go, or you can actually enroll in the course, and that way you'll know where you are in that course. So that was quite a sort of a neat little thing to have done. So some successes. So I'm just going to do from...
How many recordings have you got over there, Rory?
Well, I think we've got a combination of lessons. So we've probably got about 15 webinars. We've got maybe about 10 lessons, like they're specific lessons about functions. And we've got demonstrations of how to build things, so maybe another 5 or 6 of those. And not everything has made it into the course, not because they're not good enough, but just because I've kind of thrown lots of things into the course. But there's a really neat lesson on working with images with Michelle, and it's one of my favorite ones because it taught me things I literally didn't know. So there's a lot of content there. So I'm going to jump back to the presentation, and I'm going to go on to, so from the current side, so successes. So the Power Platform Learn.academy, thoroughly recommend you go there. The children can learn about Power Apps, probably with an adult to help them along the way. There's PowerPlatformLearn.com. That's actually my website, so I'm not quite sure why I decided to. I just obviously had Power Platform on the brain, but it's actually PowerApps4Kids.com would be the website that you go to. And I also think that the lessons that we created were actually quite good lessons. So if you, like Peter, I know that you did one lesson on global variables, but they're really, really important. And so having a little lesson just on that was very useful to us. So we're just about at the end of this presentation. I've jumped out there, and really it's a case of saying, do any of you have any questions on what we've covered so far? Peter, I can't see the chat at the moment, so maybe you'd have a look there and see if we've got any questions in the chat.
Yeah, I've been going through the chat, and I've been pretty much going through the chat as we went along. I answered a couple of questions and a couple of comments. Lots of very positive comments on the 5 minutes to wow, and lots of good positive comments on Leo's demonstration. So I thought it was...
you know what I'd love to do now?
Oh, I've got another question over here.
Oh, yeah,
what's the ideal age for kids to start with Power Apps? Well, I don't think there is an ideal age. It's like Leo said earlier, he started when he was 8. I'm sure he could have done this when he was 7 or 6. If you start any earlier, you just want to keep the apps a little bit more simple, probably. But if you look at what do you do at school, could you then do the same kind of thing? So Leo implemented the sums app with multiplications because he was okay with multiplications. If you did this a little bit earlier on, maybe you want to just do additions, and that's it. So I think you got a different. It all depends. You need to aim it at the right audience, and that's I think what probably the main lesson is to take away from it all. And I don't think there's a right age. I was a very late starter.
I think it all depends on the level of support from the parents. So when we run our PowerApps for Kids events, we actually call it PowerApps for Big Kids and Little Kids. And part of that is because we're saying, hey, just because you're a big kid doesn't mean you can't learn PowerApps. But it's also really saying that, do you know what, if you want your children to be successful at this, you're probably going to need to give them a little bit of a help. And part of that is because the interface that you work with is the same interface that me and Peter work with at work. So therefore you've got all of the same options. So therefore you can get just as lost because of those options. So as a result of that, there's, you've got you really need parents to be involved. And certainly as far as this course is concerned, it's a PowerApps for Kids course, but in my case, I've put together a course for adults. And so this course for adults is, I'm going to call it a grown-up course. It's a course that you do if you're really going to be committed to this particular product. So, the children's thing is for building neat things, and I love doing it as well. But the course that I've also put together is very, very comprehensive and also free, as it happens. So I think that have we gone to the end of the questions, Peter?
Yeah, I think we have. And looking at the time, I think we're at the end of the hour, roughly. I think.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to do that and finally, our final words are really to say thank you for your participation in this session, and thank you to the Scottish Summit. If any of you are into Twitter, then by all means tweet something out about this session. Make sure that if you are interested in what we're doing, or if you want to get a little bit more involved with your child in this, then you can go to PowerApps4Kids.com and you can have a look around at what we've done. Maybe join us at our next event. Peter, did you have any final words to say to people?
No, I just like to thank the Scottish Summit and all the attendees here today. And of course, our big star of the show, Leo.
Well done, Leo. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, everyone, for coming on to this event. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.